I grew up hating Christmas for reasons I never talked about. My friends thought I was just one of those edgy kids trying to stand out, but the truth was darker than anything they ever guessed. Christmas terrified me, because when I was 12 years old, something came down our chimney that wasn't Santa Claus. Something that wasn't human. And it changed the rest of my life. Back then, my family was still intact. Mom, Dad, my older sister Jenny, and me. We lived in a peaceful neighborhood in Colorado, where every house turned into a glowing winter postcard in December. My mom loved Christmas. She decorated the house like she was auditioning for a magazine cover. Lights, wreaths, candles, ornaments, everything had to be perfect. The tree was her pride. A tall, real pine tree that reached almost to the ceiling. It smelled like the forest and made the whole house feel warm. I should have loved it too, but something about that year felt wrong. Like we'd invited something into the house that didn't belong. On Christmas Eve, it started. I was sitting on the couch, drinking hot chocolate, when I heard something inside the chimney. At first I thought it was just the house settling, or maybe a bird. But then I heard it again, a dragging, scraping sound. Slow, heavy, like something was climbing down. My dad laughed it off when I pointed it out. He told me Santa was making an early delivery. But I'd never seen him look worried before, and that night, he looked worried. His smile didn't reach his eyes. The sound stopped as suddenly as it started, and we all pretended everything was fine. We opened our Christmas Eve gifts, drank eggnog, played board games, and finally went to bed. That's when the real nightmare began. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a sound that made my stomach twist, a wet, sucking noise coming from downstairs, like something pulling itself across the floor. I sat still, listening. The house was silent except for that horrible sound. I slipped out of bed and crept to my door. Jenny's room was across the hall. Her door was open too, and she was awake. She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. She'd heard it too. Without speaking, we walked to the top of the stairs and looked down. The Christmas tree lights were still on, casting soft glows across the living room. At first, I didn't see anything. But then something moved behind the tree. Something tall. Something wrong. It was hunched, its long limbs hanging at strange angles. Its skin, if you could call it that, looked stretched and thin, like it had been pulled too tight over its bones. And its head was tilted against the wall, listening. I swear it was listening for us. Jenny gasped quietly beside me, and that was enough. The thing snapped its head up. Its face was long and featureless, just pale flesh stretched smooth, except for its eyes. Two sunken, black holes that seemed to absorb the light around them. When it looked directly at us, every part of my body screamed to run. But I froze. The thing's mouth tore open sideways across its face, like splitting wrapping paper. A wet gasp came out. Then, in a voice like air hissing through a vacuum, it whispered, "Ey." My blood went cold. Jenny grabbed my hand and yanked me back into her room. We shut the door and tried to stay quiet, but the house began to shake with its movements. Slow, dragging footsteps came toward the stairs. Thump, scrape, thump, scrape. As it climbed, the wood creaked under its weight. Jenny shoved me into her closet and shut the doors. She whispered that she'd distract it, send it toward her room instead of mine. I tried to stop her, but she pushed me back inside and told me she loved me. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. I covered my mouth to keep from screaming. I heard Jenny's bedroom door slowly open. The thing stepped inside. Jenny screamed. I burst out of the closet and ran toward the hallway. I didn't think, I just ran. When I reached her room, the thing was standing over her, its long fingers wrapped around her waist, lifting her toward its gaping sideways mouth. I grabbed the biggest thing I could find, her snow globe, and smashed it against the creature's leg. The creature let out a shriek that shook the whole house. Jenny dropped to the floor, sobbing. The monster turned toward me. It started whispering again. "Ey." But this time, it was clearer. I came, from the chimney, for you. I ran. I don't mean I ran like a scared kid. I mean I ran like prey. I sprinted down the hall, toward my parents' room. Jenny stumbled after me. The creature slithered behind us, its limbs tapping and scraping on the walls. I burst into my parents' room screaming. Dad jumped up, confused, and Mom grabbed me, asking what was wrong. Then they saw it. The thing filled the doorway, its limbs twisted like broken branches. It stared at us with those black empty eyes, head twitching. My dad grabbed the baseball, but he kept under the bed. With a shout, he charged the creature. Mom pushed us behind her. The thing moved faster than anything that big should move. It slashed my dad across the chest, sending him crashing into the wall. Mom screamed. The creature lunged at him again, but my mom grabbed the lamp from a nightstand and smashed it into the creature's head. Glass shattered. Sparks flew. For the first time, the creature recoiled. "Run!" Mom shouted. We bolted downstairs. The creature followed, its body bending backwards, sideways, every direction at once. It looked like it didn't have bones holding it together. Dad was bleeding badly. Mom was dragging him toward the door. But the creature moved faster, blocking the exit. It whispered again. "Chimney, chimney, chimney." Then its jaws opened wider than ever. It lunged. Mom screamed. Jenny cried. Dad yelled. I didn't think. I ran to the fireplace. I grabbed one of the burning logs with my bare hands. The pain shot up my arms, but I didn't stop. I turned and hurled the flaming log at the creature's face. The creature shrieked, a sound like metal screaming. It stumbled backward, clawing at its burning skin. Mom dragged Dad out the door. Jenny grabbed me, pulling me toward safety. But I turned back. Because the creature wasn't running away. It was climbing. It pulled itself upward, limbs twisting as it crawled back into the chimney, retreating into the darkness brick by brick. Each movement made a wet, sickening sound. Before disappearing fully, it whispered one last time. Next Christmas. Then it was gone. The paramedics came. Dad needed stitches, but he lived. Jenny had bruises but was okay. Mom kept telling the cops she saw a wild animal, but none of them believed her. They said it must have been a home invader on drugs. But I knew the truth. And I didn't sleep for a long time. We moved out of the house before the next Christmas. But the new homeowners didn't stay long. I heard, years later, that something terrified their kids too. They found claw marks in the chimney, and soot smeared across the floor. I'm an adult now. I live alone. I avoid Christmas. No decorations. No candles. No trees. Especially, no chimneys. But 3 nights ago, something happened. I woke up to a sound. A familiar one. A dragging, scraping noise. Coming from inside my apartment walls. Then I heard a whisper. Chimney. I don't have a chimney, but I think it found a way back anyway. And I know one thing for sure. This Christmas, it's coming for me. Most people think Christmas Eve is a night of warmth, family, lights, music, good memories. But for my family, Christmas Eve became the night we learned what really walks through the snow when the world is quiet. What waits outside houses that glow too brightly. What watches families through frosted windows. We learned the truth the year the caroler came. It happened when I was 16. My family lived in a quiet New Hampshire town buried under snow. The kind of place where everyone decorated for the holidays, where every house looked like a postcard. My mom loved Christmas. She treated it like a sport. Decorations were her battlefield. By December 20th, our house looked like a Hallmark movie. Dad didn't mind. He liked the warmth. He liked pretending everything was calm. Everything changed on December 24th. It was around 11:30 p.m. when it started. We were finishing up a late Christmas movie when a sound echoed from the front porch. Knock, knock, knock. Slow. Rhythmic. Too spaced out. Not like someone asking to come inside. More like someone announcing that they were there. Dad frowned and got up. Probably a late caroler, he said, shrugging. But even he sounded unsure. Who goes caroling at nearly midnight, in a snowstorm? He opened the door. And for a moment, everything was silent. I remember the cold hitting the house like a wave. The wind carried soft flakes of snow inside. But the porch was empty. No footprints. No lantern. No person walking away. Just untouched snow. Mom laughed nervously. Kids playing around, she said. Dad nodded, but I saw the way his eyes lingered on the snow. Something wasn't right. Around 2 a.m., long after my parents went to bed, I woke up to something that made my stomach twist. Singing. Soft. Slow. A voice humming a tune I knew. Silent Night. But the voice was wrong. Too low. Too breathy. Too slow. Like someone trying to imitate a human voice and not getting it quite right. I walked to my bedroom window and wiped the frost away. My heart stopped. There was someone standing in our front yard. Tall. Too tall. Thin like a skeleton wrapped in a coat that hung unnaturally straight. The figure wore an old-fashioned carol outfit. Long coat, scarf, tall hat. But the clothes looked soaked, frozen to the body. Snow stuck to them like frostbite. Even worse, their face was turned directly toward me. They weren't holding a lantern. They weren't moving, just staring and humming. I ducked under the window frame, terrified they saw me. When I gathered enough courage to peek again, the caroler was gone. No footprints, just snow swirling in the darkness. I barely slept. When I came downstairs Christmas morning, Mom and Dad were acting too cheerful, too loud. They knew something was wrong too. I could see it in the stiffness of their shoulders, how they kept glancing toward the windows. No one mentioned the knocks. No one mentioned the singing. Dad checked the porch twice. Mom turned on every light in the house. The house felt like a fortress. But even fortified homes have windows. That night, as we were cleaning up dinner leftovers, the singing came back. Louder. Closer. This time the voice sang actual words. Sleep in heavenly peace. Mom froze. Dad's face turned pale. He grabbed the nearest thing resembling a weapon, a fireplace poker, and motioned for us to stay back. He walked toward the big living room window. I stepped behind him, trembling. The singing grew louder. Heavenly peace. Dad pulled back the curtain. What we saw will haunt me forever. The caroler stood inches from the glass. Its face looked human at first, but the skin was too smooth, like wax. The eyes were hollow black pits reflecting the Christmas lights. The mouth hung open in a stretched, unnatural O shape, much wider than any human mouth could open. The song was coming from that impossible hole. Dad screamed and stumbled back. Mom grabbed the phone to call 911. But the moment she touched it, the singing stopped. The caroler tilted its head, jerking in sharp, unnatural movements, like a glitching marionette. Then it leaned closer and whispered, "Let me in." Mom dropped the phone. The caroler placed one long, skeletal hand on the glass. The window began to crack. We hid in the basement that night, waiting for the police. They never saw anything. No tracks. No figure. No signs of forced entry. But we knew. The caroler wasn't a person. And it wasn't done with us. On December 26th, a brutal blizzard hit. The snow piled against the doors and windows. Visibility dropped to zero. The world turned white. That night around 1 a.m., the power went out. No lights. No heat. No phone service. Just darkness. And then, singing. Not from outside. From the walls. The voice slithered through the air vents, down the hall, under the doors. Sleep in heavenly peace. Dad grabbed us and pushed us into the master bedroom. He jammed a chair under the doorknob and told us not to move. The singing grew louder, and louder, and louder, until it was right outside the bedroom door. Let me in. The doorknob began to shake. Violently. The chair rattled across the floor. The caroler's voice deepened, distorted, like multiple voices speaking at once. Let me in. Then the singing stopped. Silence. We held our breath. Something scraped across the floor outside the door. Long fingernails, dragging. Then, crack. A long, grey hand slid under the bottom of the door. Longer than any human arm. The fingers stretched, bending backward, trying to hook onto something. Mom screamed. Dad kicked the hand with all his strength. The hand snapped back like a rubber band. The singing resumed instantly, furious. Sleep in heavenly peace. But then, something changed. A loud, sharp sound cut through the house. A bell. A church bell. The town's old church bell rang in the storm. Midnight mass, delayed because of weather. The caroler shrieked, a horrible, inhuman scream that rattled the windows. Then it ran. Not walked. Not glided. It ran, thundering across the floorboards, down the stairs, slamming into walls, thrashing against windows. And then, it was gone. The singing stopped. Only the church bell echoed through the storm. When morning came, everything was quiet. The storm stopped. The world looked peaceful again. But the snow on our porch was untouched. No footprints. No shadows. No marks of anything trying to get inside. We moved out of town within a week. My parents never spoke of it again. But I still hear the caroler sometimes. Usually in December. Usually late at night. And last year, for the first time since that night, I heard singing outside my apartment window. Soft, gentle, sleep in heavenly peace. If you enjoyed these terrifying Christmas horror stories, make sure you smash that like button, because it helps the channel more than you know. Subscribe if you're new. I upload realistic horror stories every single week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next.